It's my pleasure tonight to be the one who gets to announce the nominees for Best Performance by an Actress in a Motion Picture Drama. And they are Cate Blanchett, Elizabeth. Whoa. She's good. Fernanda Montenegro, Central Station. Susan Sarandon, Stepmom. You can be mine anytime you want, Susan. And the wonderful Meryl Streep, One True Thing. Emily Watson for Hillary and Jackie. And the winner is, God, if it's a tie, I'm lost. Ooh, Cate Blanchett.
Joining me now, Cate Blanchett. Before I introduce you, you had not seen that.
No, that was genuine shock.
You didn't expect it?
No, not at all. No. You don't. You sort of, you do the work, and then that stuff is sort of, I mean, it's fairyland, really. Yeah. So, but it was wonderful.
After critically acclaimed roles for Cate Blanchett in films like Paradise Road and Oscar and Lucinda, she has become one of our finest actresses and a favorite for this year's Oscars. As the star of the film Elizabeth, she portrays the title character, Queen Elizabeth I. In 1558, at the age of 25, she took the throne of a Catholic country, declared a Protestant, fought off assassination attempts from the French and the Spanish, and ruled for more than 45 years. Here is the trailer from the film.
A court to worship you, a country to obey you. I will mean nothing to you.
Oh, but you know you're everything to me.
Is held by none.
Until you marry and produce an heir, you will find no security.
Again, I am pleased to have Cate Blanchett on this program to talk about an extraordinary film, an extraordinary role, and an extraordinary performance. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Tell me how you thought about this role and how you approached it and what you wanted to make out of it.
Well, the things that I've always enjoyed playing most in theatre and in film as well, there have been parts and stories that I have had no idea how to approach at all. They sort of, I think that as an actor I can often confuse anxiety with excitement. And so I think because of that excitement, and particularly with a role like Elizabeth, I just immersed myself. I read obviously a lot of biographies about her, but it was the discussions, I think, that and the various opinions that came out of the conversations of about her and about the legacy that she left England and really how she culturally transformed England as we know it. And what I was curious that listening to all the cast, the English cast, that they had such differing facts, and they kept saying that this is backed up by historical fact, and I thought that's amazing. So I tried to sort of embrace all those disparate opinions about her and galvanise them. And I think that in a lot of ways that's what Elizabeth is actually doing. She's galvanising the opinions that her enemies have about her and using them against them. So
that's in part of how you came to see her. Tell me more about, once you immersed yourself in this. You had a script, but as you immersed yourself into this extraordinary woman, to use extraordinary one time too many, what did you find and what was interesting to you about her? And what did you say, if nothing else, I want to get this about Elizabeth?
Well, Shekhar Kapoor, the director, from the very beginning, he was talking about her as an unformed being. And from all the letters that I read about her, and certainly all the people that, the ambassadors, foreign ambassadors who came and met with her, right from, not only before, it was before she was queen, it seemed to go against that. And so I couldn't understand what he was talking about. She seemed to be so self-aware, and she had really strong performance instincts, I think, because right from an early age she had to wear a mask in order to survive. She had to, I suppose, mask her religious differences to Mary, her sister, because Elizabeth, I guess, was more aligned with the Protestants, and Mary, obviously, was a Catholic. So I found, I suppose, to inhabit that naive young girl in a very knowing way. And in a lot of ways, I suppose I held my cards as an actor close to my chest whilst trying to inhabit the mask that Shaker was interested in, if that makes
No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. What about her shaped her in coming to give her the strength that she had to survive and to rule for so long?
Well, I do think, and this is something that Shaker did talk about a lot, and being Indian, I think it sort of gave him a different sort of sensibility on it. He kept talking about destiny, and I think that Elizabeth had a very strong sense of destiny. And so I think that, and she's desperately ambitious, incredibly ambitious, and probably had a lot more natural ability as a leader than her brother and Mary, her sister, had.
She was deadly ambitious.
Yeah. So but I think the thing that moved me most about her was her isolation, and how she had basically, by the time she was 9 or 10, there had been rebellions in her name, and people had most of the people. Her mother was obviously beheaded by her father, which, you know, obviously dislocates you from your family.
Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII.
Yeah. So I think it was that she was a still point in an incredibly turning world, and that she had to look after herself. And I think because really the film does deal with, it's a love story in a lot of ways, I found it interesting that she did hold herself back. She didn't ever completely give herself over to a great love because of her enormous political ambition. So I think it was probably that isolation.
You and I were talking earlier, and I said there was something about, if you have great opportunity at governance, you know, and it is your mission and your mandate and your destiny, in a sense, that becomes what your life is really about. And as you said, she just gave over herself to that in lieu of sex and a lot of other things, as far as we know. Yes,
and
in terms of a traditional family life, unlike Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, or the monarchy at the moment. I think it was obviously a much more God-centered universe than we exist in now, and the divine right of being, the divine chain of being with God at the head and the serfs down the bottom. Yeah. The monarch was actually anointed by God, and therefore to go against the king or queen was to go against the church. And I mean, something that does interest me, and also in terms of what's happening to Clinton at the moment, is it's that sense of morality that almost overtakes all political decisions. That somehow there's a universal sense of morality, and I think that Elizabeth was saying that her propriety and her own personal sense of morality was shouldn't be under question because she was anointed by God. It's quite confusing. And
I get your point, though. But the interesting thing about her too is that I suspect that for a young actress, there are few roles that are more interesting to undertake, because the life is so full of largeness.
It's so dense and so rich. I mean, it's a gift of a role for an actor, and particularly this journey in this particular fantasy of Elizabeth, in that the bookends of the film are so extreme. So the arc of the journey that you get to map out as an actor is I mean, that is really rare, the journey that she goes on. I think a lot of roles, actually, you shift from A to A.5, you know, A+, you don't actually get to go to Z.
It's incremental.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was really important to me, and because we were working in quite a chaotic way, and there were a lot of... everyone knew what the essence, the spirit of the story would be, but we didn't know how it would piece together. Obviously, I mean, so rarely you do in film. But it was important to me that those changes were, like you're saying, incremental, that they were subtle, that it wasn't sort of all of a sudden she was turning into the monarch as we know her.
What happens between a director who you did not know, who'd seen you in Lucinda, as Lucinda, I guess in the movie or in a promo or something?
On a promo reel, I think.
In a promo reel, yeah. Meaning what, somebody had given him a series of reels and this was one of the people he might look at, or was it just a promo reel for Oscar and Lucinda?
I think it would just happen to be floating around the office, working title
and
office.
He said, take a look at this, and he looked at it and knew that you were the person he wanted.
Yeah, he very romantically says that he saw my face come out of the water and he knew it was me, but, a screen test and a lot of discussions later. But I mean, that's great. I mean, it's when I met Shaker, it was more. I think my relationship with him was more characterised by silences, and I think it's a very deep, profound way to work when someone knows when to come in and when to go out, and he was very sensitive about that stuff, and he cast very specifically, and I think quite eclectically. Like sitting around the table, you had Lord Attenborough, and then you had Eric Cantona, and then you had Vincent Cassel, and then you had Geoffrey Rush and myself, and all from quite different acting traditions, and he was somehow able to galvanise all those people.
Quite different acting interpretations of Attenborough, of course, lives in London. Quite different interpretations of Elizabeth, or all of you united by the script that you had in terms of what you wanted to say about her?
I think we were united in the fact that we'd come together every morning and thresh out something, and we'd sort of block something out, but still we wouldn't know exactly what it was. So I think in a lot of ways, a lot of, myself included, a lot of the actors were kind of shifted off centre. And there's such a sense, I think, in my vast career, you know, but that you have to be in control as an actor, and that if you don't know absolutely what's going to happen, then you can't actually mark the journey. And what I sort of discovered is that it's a really great way to work in that chaotic environment, because you can often reach for things and not quite get them, and it's often in the grasping for something that a magical moment is produced. You don't have to get there. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Here's another clip. I want to show a lot of this because it's such a great film. No. I know you said that when we sat down. Here's another interesting thing. Geoffrey Rush is he Australian or New Zealand? Australian. Shine, we know him from well. You are Australian, and the director is Indian. Former parts of the...
Yes, all the colonies are represented.
Here is after the death of Queen Mary, Elizabeth becomes the Queen.
This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvellous in our eyes.
You shot this at the same time, as you were telling me as we were watching this. Princess Diana had just tragically been killed.
Yes.
And so there was a sense of transition and mourning.
It was the strangest thing. We were, I was in London and actually got the call from Australia that she had died, and then the very next day we went up to Newcastle to film that. And I'd never been in a stranger environment. There was a sort of this pall over the whole cast and crew. It somehow had to be with 150 people who were all ostensibly mourning, even though they didn't know this woman. It was quite strange, and it just gave a weird sort of tilt to this scene. It was very strange, because I mean, prior to that, I mean, she'd had as much impact on me as women's magazines, and it was really quite humbling. So.
When you finished this, had you changed your perception of her at all? Or, I mean, had anything, just the sheer doing of it and all the labor that went into it, did it change anything about your feeling for her?
I suppose it
deepened it or something? It
deepened my sense of her humanity. One of the very first things that I did, just before the British Library closed for relocation, I went in and had a look at some of her letters. It was Essex death warrant, I think, and then there was a letter to her brother when she was incarcerated, asking for her to be released. So she would have been 17, and then she would have been maybe 60. And to see her handwriting, I'd only known her as this powerful monarch who had left such a stamp on England, and I suddenly saw her as a living, breathing human. And I think it's invigorating to then go back and read about her, because it somehow draws you and implicates you in when you're reading a dry history book, I suppose. So.
It does. One more look at this. This is the clip from when Sir Francis, the great friend of Elizabeth, played by Geoffrey Rush, tells her that he is there to protect her because it is not believed that she is fit to rule.
Why did they send such children? Why did they not send proper reinforcements?
Because the bishops would not let them. They spoke against it in the pulpits.
I think of you sitting around the table, and there's the director, and there's Sir Richard Attenborough, Dickie to his friends.
I never know what to call him.
Yes, Sir Dickie. He's a presence there for you and someone that you admire, and
He was a rock, and incredibly humble, obviously, because he's a director as well, but he completely supported Shaker and all of us. But on the very first day of rehearsals, he was sitting beside me, having that terrifying moment of the read-through, which is just, particularly when you're doing an accent, and particularly when you're playing the Queen of England, you get a bit nervous. Yeah. And I looked over and he had his folder there, which Noel Coward had given to him, and in the back in Boston Gold were all the films that he'd been involved in. And I just sort of was looking across and I thought, my God, they're the great films of cinema history. Right. So he's a living legend, but he's so generous, and I found him so nuanced as a performer, and also so clear, and he's able to give over his preconceptions and expectations to what Shaker was wanting to do with the film.
The first thing you notice when you see these clips, if you haven't seen the film, is how much movement there is with the camera. The camera is almost circling her wherever she goes, wherever you go.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing that Shaker said, and really helpful when we started shooting, that he wanted the camera in the beginning to be a predator, and then as the film progressed, that it would become a loyal subject. So amongst all the chaos of the filming, I always knew what the audience was, so it gave me a really strong sense of, well, a strong sense of audience. Yeah. So at least that was a clear...
So it goes from all around you to, in a sense, being at your feet.
And much more still. There's a lot more. I mean, I've only seen the film once, but a lot. Right. The camera, there wasn't as much movement or tracking or up and down. You know, the early days were like, whoa, it was really sort of difficult to navigate. But that was the emotional experience of it.
You've only seen the film once.
Oh, well, what's the point? I've had the experience. You've got to give it over to the audience. But maybe, I mean, I might watch it again on video. It's important, I think, for me anyway, to watch it. You know, particularly because I haven't made that many films. Yeah. To learn what worked and what didn't work, but in the end you can drive yourself crazy with that sort of stuff. You just have to, you know, realise what the experience was at the time and go ahead and hopefully not make those same mistakes again. Or
there is about you this sense that early on people were saying you had it, whatever it was, talent, let's say. Did they say that?
My mother said that.
Well, of course, mothers always say that. But even others who said they watched you early on when you were in drama school.
I mean,
did you feel that? I mean, that this man, whatever else there is about living, I have found what I came here to do. You were a natural for this. I mean, whatever it was that once you began in drama school, people began to take notice, and it just worked for you. I mean, you're not Emily Watson we just saw in the Globe. She was rejected 3 or 4 times from drama school before she got.
And I'm sure in hindsight she says it's you know, character building, but at the time it's incredibly traumatic. And I think that actors are a product of their experience as actors, and part of, I think it's a growing sense of security in that. You know, I suppose what I was trying to say is that straight out of drama school I was working with Geoffrey Rush, you know, who's a god of the theatre, you know, who's Lecoq trained, and he's astonishing to work with, like just amazing. And so to have that experience and then to be cast alongside Rafe and to be working with Frances McDormand in Paradise Road, you know, they're the votes of confidence where you think, well, maybe something's working. But I do just think job to job. Every time I start a role...
But each part adds... Go ahead.
Every role, I think I don't know how to do this. I don't think I can do this. And so it means that you have to approach it with a sense of humility and really try and unlock something, not come over the top of something.
Is there something different between humility and insecurity?
I think there is.
Humility is I have to have a certain respect for, so that I will give it my best, as if it's my last role ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the more you do, the more you can look back and say, that worked, that didn't work, and therefore you can sort of briefly pat yourself on the back. But I'm, you know, I don't like to dwell on the positives of the. I like to sort of close the door in a lot of ways.
When you leave it, you leave it.
Yeah, so I can move on afresh, I suppose.
What's the ambivalence about?
Well, in that I suppose, you know, way back when I was at high school, I was interested in watching and participating from the outside. So I guess that's the way I sort of tend to approach work. And I don't know, I don't...
You're more observer than actor, in a sense, in your own mind?
Maybe naturally.
Yeah.
And I think it's that thing where every time you go into a rehearsal room, the hardest thing is saying, okay, I have to get up and embarrass myself, and I have to sort of, I have to embrace that right to fall flat on my face.
But could you also argue, though, that being an observer means that you constantly, if you're an observer, are watching qualities, watching character, watching characteristics, watching what it is that makes a character a role, or that you can mimic, that you can pick up on, that you can incorporate?
No, I like when I'm out to dinner with someone, or I'm reading a book. I like to just be out to dinner or reading a book,
Yeah.
and I think that's the thing. It's which is tricky as an actor, is you have to keep one technical eye out, but then you have to be completely inside the experience, and that's the way I like to live my life, is completely inside it. And I guess that's why I don't think so far ahead.
So when you were doing Elizabeth, you thought like Elizabeth, you moved like Elizabeth?
I guess I'm not a method actor. I sort of think that you've got to use whatever is around you. And I think a lot about filmmaking, the piecemeal nature of it can be frustrating, in that you don't have that luxury of going through the arc of the night as you do in theatre. So you kind of have to use those circumstances to your advantage. Like if you've got a cold, you've got to use it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I don't...
Yeah. You leave this performance in Elizabeth to go to the stage in London in a David Hare play.
Another thing I don't know how I'm going to approach, but I'm really excited. I was speaking to David. It's Plenty is
Right.
the play, and it hasn't had a production inside London since it was first performed in 1978. And he was saying it would be interesting for the younger he's calling me the younger generation, to
29 or something.
Yeah, to perform the play, and also a younger audience to see it who haven't got that visceral experience or that recent memory of the Suez Canal, because for him it's a quite a political play,
Yeah.
whereas I read it and got straight into the emotional and intellectual side of it. Because I think just beginning to read about the Suez, it was a door through which the British populace went through, from which they didn't return. It was a failure, and I think that sense of failure and the impact that it has on post-war Britain.
I remember when I was in college,
You remember the Suez? That's okay.
I do remember the Suez. I wasn't in college then, but I remember it. And I remember when I was in college, I had an assignment once to go back and read all of the editorials of the New York Times on the crisis, and to try to see an editorial position of the Times on the Suez as we saw it unfold, as a crisis. I mean, and you remember people that, look like foreign secretaries like Anthony Eden. People like that, look like foreign secretaries ought to look like in one's imagination. You're wonderful, and I thank you for coming, and congratulations on the Golden Globe, and much success
Thank you.
with the Oscar and with Plenty on
Thank
the
you.
stage. When does it open, Plenty?
About April 26th, I think.
So you have time.
I have time.
Australia remains home?
Yeah. There's a famous song about it, but I won't sing it.
Oh, please. Come on, tell me just a little.
And Peter, the Peter Allen song?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I still call Australia home. Well, it is.
Thank you. Back in a moment. Stay with us. For over 40 years, Catherine Deneuve has captivated audiences.
Oh my God, I feel dead when you say that.
It's true. All right, let's start over. That's great. For over 40 years, Catherine Deneuve has captivated audiences, becoming a cultural icon for her native France. She's been directed by some of the world's best, Truffaut, Polanski, and Buñuel. She has appeared in over 90 films, including Belle du Jour, The Hunger, and her Oscar-nominated performance in Indochine. Here is a brief look at an extraordinary career.
Dans la maison d'Émile, j'ai touché à rien, l'armée dans sa main.
Perrault!
Et il s'est pas suicidé, parce qu'on ne donne pas la mort avec son enfant dans les bras.
Allez, calme-toi, Yann, calme-toi.
C'était ça la journée de liberté. Alors vous étiez tous d'accord. Il était libre, libre de mourir, libre de se faire des sangs.
Crois-tu qu'il me prendra comme ça? S'il me refuse tel que je suis, c'est qu'il n'éprouve pas pour moi des sentiments profonds. Si par extraordinaire il m'accepte, je n'aurai pas de raison de douter de lui, et je serai bien sotte de le repousser.
control. You don't know what's happening to you, but there's nothing to be frightened of. As long as you put your faith in me, give me time, trust me.
Trust you. I did trust you, and look what happened.
It's a bruise. It will fade.
I know it's a bruise. Look, I'm going to ask you one more time. What have you done to me?
I've given you something you never dared dream of.
What?
Everlasting life.
Ne lui dites rien, je vous en prie. Faites un effort pour me comprendre, vous au moins. Je suis perdue. Tout se passe malgré moi. Je n'y peux rien, je ne peux pas résister. Je sais qu'un jour, il faudra que j'expie pour tout ce que j'ai fait. Et sans ça, je ne pourrais pas vivre. Après tout, faites ce que vous voulez avec moi.
Tu es complètement fou, mais qu'est-ce que tu fais? Mais tu ne sortiras pas d'ici, mais qu'est-ce que tu veux? Alors, grande concentration, c'est ça que tu veux?
Laisse-la passer, laisse-la passer.
Tu ne sortiras pas d'ici. Mais non, mais je te casserai dans la figure.
Her latest film, Dancer in the Dark, teams her up with one of the most controversial directors working today, Lars von Trier. I'm pleased to have Catherine Deneuve back at this table. Welcome back.
Hello.
You were singing while we were watching. Can you just give me a little more of that? Can you just show me what you were singing? What were you singing?
I don't think I can really sing, like that. It's just that when we saw the clip of Amber of Cherbourg, I realized that you never forget, the words and the music of a thing you have done like that, because you have to rehearse for such a long time. And after that, it's in your head when I would be unable to give you lines, from a script or a normal story.
Right. But you can remember songs.
Oh, yeah. Especially Amber of Cherbourg, yes.
Do you like to sing?
Yes.
You
I
do?
sing everywhere.
You do?
I mean, in a taxi, in the street. When my children were young, they would complaining that, please, mommy, don't do that. They thought it was too, something too special to do. And I whistle a little. And but children don't like parents to do things like that and be noticed,
They don't?
No.
It brings attention to them, and children don't like for their parents to be the object of attention.
Exactly. If you could go with a grey coat to school, that would be the best thing you could do for them.
I know. It embarrasses them, doesn't it?
It's very strange, and when they're very young, yes.
Yeah. And it must be difficult for your children then, so you had to make sure that...
Difficult to have
Well,
a mother
difficult
like
because
that?
you would attract attention.
Yeah, I suppose I had to make even more effort than most parents have to do, to not attract attention, but I didn't go very often, to get them at school, not very often.
What are they doing, your children? What kinds of lives?
What kind of life? That would be even, for me, difficult to say. They are both single.
Yes.
They both have children.
Yes.
They are both actors.
Ah.
Yeah. My son is going to start a TV series next 2 weeks' time. And my daughter is just starting a film in Italy for the first time, playing in Italian. And she's struggling with Italian, even if she speaks very good Italian, because to act in a foreign language, it's difficult. And that's it. They are good parents, and they are very interesting personalities, both of them.
Did you influence them, or just the fact that they admired what you did made them sort of familiar with the profession?
I think it's difficult to know if you influence them without even thinking, I think that when you are that kind of parent and you do that kind of work, you always influence your children, not even knowing it. I think sometimes you can see, advocates, the lawyers, whose children wants to also to be lawyers later on. That's something. But it's true that I was not too keen, on my children becoming actors, and it's a mistake, I suppose, for me to have had that kind of feelings, because you think you can protect your children from having, the difficulties you think they might have in their career, in their work, and it's they never encounter exactly the same kind of difficulties you think they will. It's just that you know a little more what's might happen to them, but it's never. It's always their life. It's not yours, and they don't have the same road that you are going to have. You cannot really. So I was not too much for it, but they decided they wanted to do that, and they did it, and I accept it completely. I don't try to influence them on. Sometimes I try to discourage them, maybe, but not anymore. I mean, when they were
someone
young.
once said to me that I think it may have been Kirk Douglas said that he set out to try to discourage his children as much as possible from becoming actors, because he knew that if they wanted to, nothing he said would make a difference.
I think I tried, not that hard, but I tried, but I never thought, that if they really wanted to be actors, they would go through anyway. I didn't go that far in my thinking of trying to appeal to them, you know, in another direction. No, I didn't think really the same.
Your parents were of the theater, weren't they?
My father, yes, my father and my mother. My mother was even a child actress, you know. She was at the classic theater called l'Odéon, which is a little like the Comédie Française. And she was what we say the doyenne, which means she was the older one, you know, in this theater by 24. And my grandmother was someone who, I don't know how you say in English, you know, she said the words, you know, for the actors if they miss, you know, their lines. You don't have that anymore.
Something, yeah,
you know, she was, you are in the front of the theater and you whistle so my grandmother was doing that.
Yeah. You took your mother's maiden name, did you not?
Yes, because when I started to do films, and it was really, I thought it would be occasionally, it was not something I was sure, you know, to do. I just had to take a name because my sister had been starting in films before me. She was on stage, and she had kept our name. So I didn't think it was possible then to have two sisters with the same name. So I didn't know what to do, and my mother said, "But well, take my name." You know, it was. For me, it was just for that film. I didn't think, you know, I was not sure I would be an actress. You know, it was just for one film. And I kept my mother's name, yes.
It's been a good life, yes? In terms of professionally. It's
yes, a very good life. Professionally, it's true, a very good life.
And you're working now as much as ever.
It's true.
You know?
That's why it's been a good life. And I think
yes, exactly.
And I'm very lucky, it's true. Because it's not very easy for a woman to work after a certain age, I think, in certain kind of profession. And certainly in cinema, it's even worse than theater. You know, it's very difficult, especially here in America, I've heard, to work after a certain age.
I think it is true. Everybody talks about that. I mean, that there are not that many. And especially interesting parts. And especially sort of in the middle of your, I mean, some actresses will say, you know, there's a middle period in which you can't find the kind of roles you want to play. And then when you reach a certain age, then there's a whole nother, you know.
Yeah, go from the mother lover to the grandmother.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. There is a big gap to sort of try to fill there. It's different in Europe because I think you're allowed to grow older, you know, a little more in Europe.
I think so.
For people to start with, and for actors and actresses, especially for actresses, there are more interesting parts because maybe we have also a generation of directors, you know, who are of a certain age and they want to tell stories of people of a certain age. And despite the fact, you know, that the audience of films is a very young audience, there are still people who can make film about another kind of film, you know, who doesn't have the same kind of audience, but there is still but we have a system of help, you know, for cinema in France that helps also, you know, producers to do films like that.
You've never been tempted to move to the United States?
No, actually, I was never, you know, tempted to live anywhere else than France. You know, when I was married a long time ago, yes, I went to England, but England was very close to Paris, and I moved there for a time, you know, and I was going back and forth, and I almost settled, you know, in London. But it was for a time also where I was rehearsing for a film musical, so I could stay in London, but I never really thought I could live anywhere else. And even when I got married, I didn't think, you know, that I would have to live really in England, you know, for example. But my husband at the time was working very much and traveling also very much, so it was not something very precise that I thought I could do, that I had to do.
Yeah. I remembered recently because I was in Paris about, you know, you were the symbol of France for a long time as Marianne. Your face was...
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, on stamps.
Yeah, so exactly, on stamps. I mean, in a sense, you were an icon for a long, long time.
No, Marianne is not an icon. Marianne, who is the symbol of the Republic, you know. Yeah. And I think I feel more Republican than anything, you know, politically, so it was...
You think you feel more...
Republican.
Yeah.
In France, it's different than here.
Right. Oh, I know, very much so.
Very different.
Yes.
Means, you know, democracy, and I felt very, I thought it was something I could identify with.
Yeah. This film, I think Lars von Trier said that you asked to play the role.
No.
It didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen like that. You know, that would be too, I don't know, I think he would have been, you know, scared if I had, I didn't know him. Yeah. I wrote him a letter, you know, after I was very, very moved. And it's the first time I wrote to a director, after I had seen Breaking the Waves.
Yes.
And I knew
wonderful
that,
movie.
Wonderful film, and I was very, very moved. And I wrote to him. It was the first time, and I had heard that he was preparing a film that he would do over 10 years. And as he's in Europe, you know, and maybe the film was going to happen not only in Denmark but in some other countries in Europe, I told him that if he was coming to France and the project, you know, was developing in that direction, and with French actors, I would be very interested to meet him and work with him. And he wrote me back a very, very nice letter saying that the project, you know, was not a project for him anymore, but he had written a musical that he was hoping Björk would be the major the character in it, and if I would consider to play Björk's best friend in the film, that he would like very much me to read it. So that's how it happened.
You read it and liked it.
I read it and I liked it. I liked it because it was him, you know, who wrote the script, and because also Björk, you know, was going to write the music, and it reminded me of a very unusual project, you know, like Emperors of Cherbourg 30 years earlier, where it was a musical, but a very different kind of musical than the musical we know and that I love. Actually, I love musicals, but the whole project, you know, was very, very different. But no, I didn't ask him for the part. You know,
okay, but in a sense, it's fair to say you wanted to work with him.
Oh yes, but there are a lot of directors I want to work with. You know, I never wrote before. I don't know why Breaking the Waves, you know, sort of. I don't know. But there are a lot of directors I would like to be.
But this is the only one that you've ever written.
Yes, first time, yes.
To say, I like your work and.
I like your film, you know, because you know I like this film more than some others' film, you know. But I liked his work anyway, and this film was very, very touching for me, very special, and I felt like I wanted to.
Why was it touching? You mean Breaking the Waves, or the one?
Breaking the Waves,
or Dancer in the Dark?
No, Breaking the Waves.
Yeah. Take a look at this scene. This is when Kathy, your character, takes Selma, played by Björk, to the movie theater to watch a musical. Here it is to give you some sense of what the film is about.
I think you made friends, Kathy.
Lars, how is he different from other directors? Because he's strong?
No.
No?
He is, but I mean, he doesn't show that much. I think all the directors are different. It's that he seems to be very much like someone who is trying to find other way, you know, to film films.
Yeah.
And always to be closer to the characters and the people, you know. And I think that's very interesting, you know. What interests him in films, it's not, you know, where it's taking place, it's not the visual, but he's trying to find other ways, you know, to be closer to the faces and the emotion of a person, you know, in a film, and still to find a way, you know, a little more, less classic than usual. And I think that's why he's very attracted to the video. That's why he started to work in video.
Did he succeed in this film?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the video is a very interesting technical progression, you know, of filming in a way, but it's very dangerous also for people to work with video, because you can do anything, you know. You just really can do anything. And anything can become nothing, because there are so many possibilities, you know. Nothing, you can shoot all the time, 1 hour, 2 hours, you can come close, you can go back. I mean, it's incredible. But the problem is then you have an incredible material, and then you have to make something out of it. So it's going to give the possibility to a lot of people, you know, to be able to make a film with much less money, which is very interesting. At the same time, it will take time, I think, to have a generation of directors knowing really how to use video and make the best out of it for the film, the audience, and the actors, and the story.
Why aren't there more women directors?
There are more than before, much more than before. Because I think men are still very reluctant, you know, to have women in big positions, but not only in films, you know, in life.
In life.
I mean,
yes.
in life, in positions, you know, of taking decisions and all that. But there are more women directors than before.
You've never wanted to do it?
What?
Direct?
No.
Never?
No, I don't think so, no.
Because you enjoy acting that so much that
Because I like acting. I like I suppose also because I'm very fulfilled, you know, with the project I have written by different persons, and I don't feel that I don't carry a project, you know, that I really would like to put on screen that nobody has ever given me on films, and I'm not sure I could. I'm sure I could direct, in the sense of technically I know I could,
sure,
would know certain things because I've done so many films. But I don't think that's enough, frankly, and I'm not sure I could take all the decisions you have to take all the time, on a set, And actually, I was even watching Lars von Trier, on the film. It was a very big film. It's probably the biggest, budget they had, for a film. This one, we were in Denmark, and we were in the studios. He was surrounded, with people that really, he was not working with the studio, trying to get things their way, And sometimes I could see, because sometimes I had dinner with him, and that it's very tiring, to have to make decisions all the time and to be sure you're making the good decisions, because you have to decide things every 5 minutes,
Yes.
There is very little time to work.
You spend half of your time saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes,
yes,
no.
Not only yes, no, but you have to take decision and ask for more, and nobody's going to tell you what you have to do, You have to be in charge of everybody for a long period of time.
Well, see, I think part of what attracts people to directing is just that, though. The
Maybe.
idea of being in charge and the idea of wanting to see their vision translated to...
But a lot of people want that, but I'm not sure a lot of people can do it, Means to really be able to handle that for a long time. Because that's not enough to do that, maybe for a week or 2 or 3. But in the process of writing, producing, or at least directing and editing, and then the release of the film, that takes a year almost for a director.
Who's gotten the best performance out of you? What director?
That it's, I don't know.
Well, what do you think? What did you feel where someone is taking me to a place,
I felt very often in a film like that with a French director called André Téchiné, with who I did 3 films. And I'm going to do actually a film with him next year. Very often I felt something very strong, working with him on films where he had written also the parts, because he writes for actors, when he writes the script himself. So I would say André Téchiné and probably François Truffaut as well.
Yeah. That was a...
What?
You fell in love with him.
With who?
Truffaut. You did.
That's a very strange question.
No, it's not a question. It's just an observation because...
no, but I would have understood if you had said the other way around. Because
that he fell in love with you.
No. It's not that. It's that it's known, and written by Truffaut himself that
I know
he's always been falling in love with actresses in his films, because Truffaut was living only for films. And actually the book he wrote was called The Books of My Life, and it was more about acting and films, of course, but falling in love, with actresses in films. And he fell in love almost with all the actresses he's been working with. So I thought it was in that way you could have said that,
Your point's well taken. What does it take to get the best performance? I mean, what does a director do? I mean, Téchiné, you said, wrote his own scripts, and so therefore it gave him a connection to the work.
I think for the performance of an actress, it depends really on the actresses. Some actresses needs to be shaken, like, for example, it's known that Brigitte Bardot, was very well directed by Clouseau because he really took her, he shook her, he even slapped her, she needed to be pushed that way and very far, and some actresses need to be reassured and some actresses need to be, just loved. It depends on me personally, I know that I feel to be close to the director, to what he feels and what he tries to get from me. I have to feel confident, so I can let really myself go, and I know that if it goes wrong, he will stop me,
Confident in the fact, in his judgment, or
in his judgment.
In his judgment, not that he gives you confidence in yourself.
Well, it's important too, because some actors need time to get to a point, and some actors give everything and then you have to get them back. I need to be pushed, so I need to be I need to work with a director who give me some kind of confidence, but I need to be
pushed.
Yes, I need to be pushed a little, but I need to work with someone that I really can trust very much, professionally.
And this was true with Lars?
Yes. I knew that he knew what he was doing, and that if things were, too weird, he wouldn't use them. Too weird in the sense that it was too fussy, with the camera moving, or too close, or too... I knew that he was really very much in charge of the film, and he had a vision, of what he wanted to do.
It is amazingly... It's a very important quality if you're in front of a camera. Television, film, still. that you know and have confidence that the person who's making the decisions is looking out for you, understands you, and is looking out for you. As you say, if it's too close, has the skill and the confidence and the judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
It's very important, yes. I really have to know there is one person in charge, and this person is really, you know, in control of everything, and if anything goes wrong, like, you know, like I suppose in the circus for an acrobat, you know,
Yeah.
I need to know the director is there for the net, you know, in case something happens. I suppose also that's why I cannot go on stage, you know. It's the impression that I will be completely let alone, you know. I need the director, you know, presence, you know, and look to be able to give my best.
Okay, now I love this vulnerability about you. You don't go on...
All actors have that, I think.
Vulnerability.
They don't show it sometimes, you know. They don't want to show it, especially actors. But I think it's part of the work, you know. Because vulnerability means possibility to be open and to let things go, you know, and to be not... Because if you are not vulnerable, you give and say and are always repeating more or less the same performance, you know. You have to be open, so if you are open, you are vulnerable.
Yeah, and if you want to grow, you have to be vulnerable too.
Yes, probably.
You don't agree with that?
I never thought about it, but
yeah,
you
but I mean, you have
right?
to be and it seems to me that if you want to grow, you have to be vulnerable because you have to be willing
to be open,
willing to be
yeah.
open and willing
Yeah.
to experiment and willing
True,
to,
yes.
you know, stretch.
Yeah.
If you're always
I don't want
scared,
to
you can be
stretch, you know.
defensive.
Yeah, well, I think for a long time, you know, I was doing things because I was scared, and I wanted to prove myself that, you know, I could, you know, I could do things, and still sometimes it happens to me that I accept some things knowing that it's going to be difficult, but I want to sort of know I'm fighting against, you know, the fact I'm scared, you know, to do certain things, and that's something I had when I was quite young, you know. Still sometimes it happens that I have to do that to prove myself that I can do it, you know. There are small challenges, but to me they are important, you know.
Have you been courageous in your life generally?
Physically?
Well, physically or just...
Physically, I'm not at all, because that doesn't interest me, you know, to do performances physical, or I refuse.
You mean
to
like
do...
skiing and things like that? You have no
Yeah,
sense.
but even in films, you know, if there are dangerous things to do, I always say take someone else and dub me. I have no pretension to be the best,
Yeah.
you know, to do. I don't see the reason. I prefer to keep my my ability, you know, for things where I cannot be dubbed. You know, I have no. And then courageous. That's what you said, courageous,
yeah,
no?
courageous.
Well, I think I have, yes. I know I can face certain things, but I was never in my life, I think, pushed to... I haven't known very, very bad, you know, circumstances where I had to prove that I was brave. I've never known the war, you know. That's something that sometimes I say, but what would have I done in France, you know, being in France during the war if I was an adolescent or
Would you
an
be part of the
adult?
resistance or that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing you think when you are, you know, for someone who has never known, you know, the war. Otherwise, I try to be as brave as I can, you know, in life, yes, to face things and not to avoid things. I try that, yes. Yeah. I think I'm
so
quite
like,
brave.
for a lot of men who've never been in combat, they talk about that a lot, and it's some sense of you don't know. Nobody knows until they have faced it. Yeah.
You have a lot of occasion in life, you know, to prove to yourself and to people and people you like that you can face things, you know, even if they are disagreeable or painful, or because that's what it is for me to be brave, you know. It's to have to face things that can be uncomfortable for you and sometimes also to other people, but to do or say things.
You've always seemed strong to me. I mean, do you feel that way?
No.
You don't?
No. No.
Really? You feel vulnerable or somewhat?
I feel strong because I think I can say things strongly, but things I believe in, you know,
Yes.
so I speak strongly. But I wouldn't say I'm a strong person. I don't think I'm a weak person, but I'm vulnerable, and I can be influenced also by people or by situations. So I wouldn't say, you know, I'm a very strong, but I'm not weak either, no.
No, I don't think so either.
No.
Let's take another look at this. This is when Selma's almost completely blind, and you tell her that she is not going to rescue her anymore. Here it is.
You are going to do that too? I've had my fill of you, Selma. You do what you want. Go ahead, break your neck, you do your night shift, but don't think for 1 second I'm going to come and rescue you.
Catherine Deneuve, Dancer in the Dark. Congratulations. This looks interesting to me. I haven't seen the film. It looks very interesting. You feel good about it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel good. I feel strong about it. What I feel, you know, and what I think about the film, which is my personal opinion.
It's great to see you as always.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Catherine Deneuve. We'll be right back. Stay with us.